So our next speaker is Sarah Donald. Sarah came to the program with a bachelor's degree in graphic design and a passion for aquaculture, as well as scuba diving and education. Since arriving at Scripps, she's been able to continue to develop her interdisciplinary background through coursework in phycology, marine GIS, ocean law and policy, while also volunteering as a science diver and an aquaculture tech at the Slab Lab, which is an outdoor culinary seaweed aquaculture lab. She also filled her time with volunteering to help run the Salty Cinema, which is a film festival here at Scripps. And, yep, Allison's excited. And by helping to organize the Seaweed Festival and the Seaweed Speakeasy here at Scripps. Sarah's been very busy developing her interests and continuing to grow while she's been here. Moving forward, she hopes to continue her dedication to marine conservation as she pursues a career in shellfish and seaweed aquaculture, using her unique skill set to grow the aquaculture industry in California. It sounds like I will see you around. The title of her presentation is Ocean Farm to Table, Increasing Demand for Domestically Farmed Seaweed Through Strategic Communications and Culinary Approaches. Welcome, Sarah.
In 2021, I made the decision to leave my career in marketing and graphic design. I had spent a long day behind a computer designing coupons for a large dog food brand. Usually after long days in the office, I would head down to the beach to unwind, walk, and pick up trash along the way. And on this particular day, while grabbing trash with my trusty trash picker, I found a coupon for dog food. One that I had designed, tangled in a pile of kelp on the beach. A piece of trash that made me realize I was one small link in the supply chain that was choking our beaches and landfills with pollution. As an ocean lover and conservationist, finding that piece of trash fueled me to leave my marketing job behind in search of a career centered around ocean conservation. I wasn't yet sure what that career would be, but I knew it was time for me to align my professional life with my personal ethos. Not long after I left my career, I listened to a podcast about seaweed farming, and I knew I had found the new career I was looking for. I learned that seaweeds pull greenhouse gases from the ocean, helping combat ocean acidification. They have faster growth rates than land-based plants and thrive without the need for fresh water or fertile soil. Seaweed farming also allows fishermen, farmers, and food processors to diversify their operations and embark on new ventures. And seaweeds are also abundantly versatile. They're used in medicinal compounds and beauty products and for animal feed and various industrial uses as well. But what interested me the most is that seaweeds are a valuable source of nutrition, presenting an attractive option in addressing worldwide concerns about food security. But let's rewind a little bit. Humans have been eating all sorts of seaweed all over the world for millennia. In Japan, kombu and nori, among other species, were consumed as early as 2700 BC. Although Asian food culture has seen the most prominent use of seaweed as food, there's also evidence of humans eating seaweed on every continent. A species called dulse, for example, has been harvested in Norway since the Viking Age. And the earliest recording of humans eating seaweed comes from Chile, where dried remains of seaweed were found and dated back to 14,000 years ago. Here in North America, native tribes have been eating seaweed since time immemorial, harvesting kelp from the Pacific Kelp Highway for sustenance and other practical and spiritual uses. Today, sea vegetables are still consumed around the world, accounting for an annual value of over $11.7 billion. The majority of that seaweed is farmed in just 5 countries: China, Indonesia, the Philippines, Korea, and Japan. Although we have a history of eating sea vegetables in North America, today many people in the United States who follow a Western diet only eat seaweed when they go out for sushi or in the form of seaweed snacks from your local grocery store. Awareness of the benefits of eating seaweed is growing in the United States, and consumption continues to increase, but over 95% of that seaweed is imported. So while the seaweed farming industry has been thriving in Asia for hundreds of years, The United States is only just starting to realize the potential for a domestic market, and seaweed has become the fastest growing aquaculture sector in the United States. When I first started this project, I set out to understand how the seaweed aquaculture industry functions, what's limiting the industry's growth, and how I could apply my unique graphic design skills to help address some of those limitations. So I partnered with California Sea Grant to develop a series of educational resources for Sea Grant's National Seaweed Hub. The National Seaweed Hub is a science-based online resource created by the University of Connecticut and Sea Grant for the domestic seaweed aquaculture industry. The hub is a central location for stakeholders to share information, connect with other stakeholders, help address emerging challenges, and promote industry growth. For my capstone project, I created a series of printed infographics for the National Seaweed Hub to address specific barriers to growth the seaweed farming industry is currently facing. These barriers identified by Sea Grant include a lack of knowledge of how to prepare seaweed and access to recipes, where the seaweed is grown and how long it can be kept before spoiling. And there's also a need for improved public perceptions and a greater consumer demand for seaweeds. Another goal of these infographics was to showcase the true versatility of sea vegetables. Seaweed is just a general term for marine algae, but there's thousands of species found in the United States, many of which are edible and have their own unique flavors and textures. These 8 species you see here, sea lettuce, winged kelp, bull kelp, dulse, ogo, ribbon kelp, skinny kelp, and sugar kelp are all native to the United States and farmed by aquaculturists on both the east and the west coast. And they can be used as a key ingredient in all sorts of cuisines. I created a pamphlet for each individual species for people who are perhaps curious about cooking with seaweeds but don't know where to start. Someone who needs accessible recipes to make delicious sea vegetable dishes in their own kitchens. To do this, we recruited 3 chefs who we affectionately nicknamed the Seaweed Sommeliers. Chef Christina Ng, Chef Jules Marsh, and Chef Claire Bastarache. The chefs were asked to develop and test unique recipes for each seaweed species. We sourced farm seaweeds from farms on both the west and the east coast, including Monterey Bay seaweeds in Monterey Bay, Sunken seaweed up in Humboldt Bay, Spartan Sea Farms in the central coast of Maine, and then Atlantic Sea Farms just below that on the coast of Maine as well. And then we passed the seaweeds over to the sommeliers and let them work their magic. The recipes the sommeliers created all use seaweed as the key ingredient. They're all accessible to someone who has never cooked with seaweed before. They span a variety of cuisines, showing off the true versatility of each species. And we also asked the sommeliers to document their insights throughout the recipe development process, taking note of tips on how to prepare the seaweeds and any notable flavor and texture profiles. There are 8 total printed infographics, but let's focus in on the process to create the pamphlet for winged kelp. This species is typically farmed on the East Coast on long lines submerged in the cold, clean waters of Maine. We sourced the winged kelp from Spartan Sea Farms, and it arrived to us frozen. Here's Claire, Seaweed Sommelier Claire, with her fresh frozen winged kelp. When developing her recipes, Claire noted that the winged kelp had a very vegetal, earthy flavor, and the blades have a tender texture that would be great to use in savory dishes. So Claire was able to show off the versatility of this kelp in a recipe for winged kelp puttanesca, a savory take on the Italian classic. While the sommeliers were testing for saltiness and crunch, I was gathering useful information to give context to the recipes. I pored through peer-reviewed reports, seaweed enthusiast blogs, and spoke with experts to gather information on where each species is farmed, what time of year they're harvested, specific information about nutrition and best storage practices, what kind of ecosystem services these seaweeds provide, and the cultural history of each species as well. The seaweed sommeliers' recipes and my research and designs, with support from Sea Grant, resulted in the creation of a beautiful series of useful and educational pamphlets. I designed these resources to be collected, featuring beautiful illustrations by Madison Churchill, who you all met earlier. Not only are the pamphlets a resource for someone who is interested in cooking with seaweed, but they're also a piece of art that can be collected, displayed, and referenced. In addition to the printed pamphlets, these resources will be available on the National Seaweed Hub website, where they can be accessed by anyone. Throughout the process of working on this project, we ran into a few challenges, the most prominent of which was sourcing the seaweeds for our sommeliers to cook with. The seaweed aquaculture industry is in its early stages in the United States. Just like any burgeoning industry, there's a delicate balance between supply and demand. Too much of either could be harmful for the market as a whole. While working on this project, I learned that shipping fresh seaweed is a major challenge for producers. Fresh seaweed will only stay fresh for about 4 to 6 days after harvest, and a lack of processing infrastructure prevents producers from drying or freezing the seaweeds in bulk and extending their shelf life. While research and development are in progress to fill these industry gaps, this means that currently many of the species featured in my infographics are only available to those in close proximity to a seaweed farm, where farmers sell their products directly to the consumer at farmers markets or at their local grocery stores. With that in mind, these pamphlets may best serve as a tool for small farmers hoping to increase awareness of the specific species that they farm. The producers can easily use the infographics to share recipes and insights on how to use their products, and consumers will be inspired to buy more seaweed, making these pamphlets an effective tool to grow both supply and demand for farmed seaweeds. I started this project wanting to gain as much knowledge as possible about a growing industry, and what I learned is that although small and not without growing pains, the seaweed aquaculture world is full of passionate people, from farmers and processors to researchers and marketers on both coasts, willing to share information, knowledge, skills, and excitement about an ingredient that has the potential to become a staple in our diet in the United States. And so in the same way that finding my own design tangled in kelp inspired me to pursue a career in ocean conservation, it is my hope that these infographics inspire curious consumers to see the boundless opportunities and benefits of seaweed aquaculture for our future. But please don't throw them away on the beach. And with that, this project was a major team effort. I'd like to thank my esteemed committee members, Chef Christina Ng, Dr. Sarah Mesnick, and Emily Miller for their time and feedback, as well as our sommeliers, Jules and Claire. I'm so fortunate to have such passionate and generous people guiding me through this project. I would also like to thank the team at Sea Grant, Teresa Talley and Kyra Wallace, for making this project possible and come to life, Annie Fagan for connecting us to the East Coast Seaweed World, the National Seaweed Hub team for their generous feedback, Madison Churchill for donating her beautiful paintings, and of course the farmers who grow the delicious seaweed in this project, Ken Sparta at Spartan Sea Farms, Mike Graham at Monterey Bay Seaweeds, and Kalani and Natalie with the Smith Lab who grew the dulse right here at SIO's very own Slab Lab in partnership with Sunken Seaweed. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, that was wonderful. I just wondered if you could speak to any nutritional value of seaweed, and what it perhaps excels at. Yeah,
for sure. And seaweeds are very nutritious. It depends on the type of species that you're eating, but generally seaweeds are high in iodine, lots of fiber, tons of vitamins and minerals and antioxidants. Of course, that all depends on what type of species you're eating, but yeah, very, very nutritious for you.
What is known, if anything, about the issue of water pollution and its impact on seaweed for human health?
That's a great question. And there's still research being done to sort of figure out what the impacts of pollution are on seaweeds. They do absorb greenhouse gases from the ocean. They could possibly absorb other things as well. But yeah, more research definitely needs to be done. I know that's a concern for a lot of consumers eating seaweeds, especially grown here in California.
Sarah, how can the people in this room, how can we support local seaweed farmers?
Yeah, great question. I would say the best thing to do is to find out where your local seaweed farms are. Do a quick Google search and see where people are growing seaweed. Here in San Diego, one of my favorite companies to get farm seaweed is called Daybreak Seaweed. They don't grow the seaweed themselves, but they source seaweed from all up and down the West Coast and dry it, so it's easy. You can order it off their website. So that's a good, easily accessible way to get farm seaweed. Monterey-based Seaweeds, who we also source the seaweed from, you can order fresh seaweed off their website and they'll ship it to you in seawater. So it's super, super fresh. You just got to use it right away. And then there's Sunken Seaweed up in Humboldt Bay. They started here in the port of San Diego, and they're now farming commercially up in Humboldt. I believe they're selling at farmers markets right now, but any of these small businesses, you could probably reach out to them on their social media or by email and ask them, how do I get a hold of your seaweed? And people, like I said, people in this industry are very friendly and excited to share their passion with other people. So feel free to reach out.
Did you bring any of your pamphlets today?
I did. Unfortunately, due to the short time frame for this project, I was only able to print like 20 of them, but they're out in this hallway right here on the tables. You guys are welcome to check them out, or you can scan the QR code and see a PDF of the pamphlets as well.
Great. Thanks so much, Sarah.
Thank you.